Well, thank you all so much. Stubble work, congrats on your certification. Process, what's PAB? Is that, so forgive me, I don't know as many acronyms as maybe I could. Process analysis, I'm just making this up, so maybe somebody should type in what PAB stands for. Platform app builder, oh, got it. Sweet. Well, thanks for the update, stable work, and congratulations. Super excited for you. Without further ado, we'll jump into the presentation and sort of talk together about what data literacy looks like as you approach the second pillar of data literacy, which we call working with data. Shout out to Aaliyah for this snazzy slide. Our hope is that as you continue on your path towards data literacy, from reading data, working with data, analyzing data, and then we sort of split this other one called communicating data, arguing with data, because you sort of want to know your data so you can make inferences about it as the last one. And then ideally there's a treasure at the end of that path. So we're having fun with icons and themes, using some nature-based themes this time around. I am the Chief Engagement Officer for a company called Apsona. I live in this space doing data every day. I work in data. I do a lot of my own data management work myself. I use a bunch of different apps for data management. Apsona is one of those. This is not specifically a product sell for Apsona. It's a conversation around how do we help people across the Salesforce space get better at data literacy. And working with data is one of the key aspects of that. Where I sit in this space is I sort of in this little backpacking guy where I work with a bunch of customers across the world that all are using Apsona, sometimes other products, and they're saying, how do I get my data to work for me? How do I get my data to create value? How do I make my data more understandable? And the outcome is that ideally you become more powerful in your Salesforce instance. You can use data more powerfully to make decisions, reference your learning, create insight for your team members, help them to create insight as well. And then fun picture of my family as I travel around. Looking forward to seeing some of you guys at our next world tours or Dream and conferences. So to kick us off, data literacy is the ability to read, work with, analyze, and communicate data. This is, at a standard view, the accepted sort of definition by most standards. Now, this isn't Salesforce specific, but all of us sort of have Salesforce in common. So I'm taking a large part of my background and experience and saying, hey, if your data is in Salesforce, you need these skills as well. And data literacy is basically a way to reference how capable you are as a user of Salesforce to use the data in a way that creates value for your team. This means expectedly that you can read data, whether it's in a report, a table. You can work with data, which is the focus of today. And then our future April topic is how to analyze that data, how to report on it, cross-analyze it, create some insights from that data, and then how you can communicate that with others. So if you guys have questions along the way, you're welcome to post them in the sidebar chat. Aaliyah will flag me and tag me along the way if I miss a question. But our goal today is to get through this idea of what does it look like to work with data in Salesforce. So my question for you all is, when it comes to answering or asking this question about data literacy, and you think about these sort of items, where would you guys say that you are? Like, where do you spend most of your time? Maybe I'll use that comment. So if you were to say reading data for a 1, working with data at a 2, or analyzing data at a 3, where do you think you sort of spend most of your time when you're actually in Salesforce every day? Are you reading data in reports, or maybe explaining data models, or looking at specific fields and references? Are you working with data to sort of clean it up, make it more manageable? Are you actually in the reporting phase and doing lots of reports back and forth with stakeholders or others and sort of explaining, this is what the data tells us. Here's what the data says. Here's what the data in Salesforce says. And here's what it's telling us. Great comments. So a lot of us are at 2, Gene's at 3, solid. And it's expected, we'll go through some other slides, it's expected that you're moving back and forth across these circles on a consistent basis. Great, thanks Anne for the comment. And yes, Ashley, the dreaded experience of having to create data that other people give you, and then you have to actually add it to Salesforce. Yeah, feel that one a lot. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Lisa. So good to see you, Lisa. So another way to think about these concentric circles is, in some level, the responsibilities or the skills needed are not the same for all of the people in your organization as it is for some of you. And if you're on this call, chances are you care about data literacy, or you care about your Salesforce data. And chances are you might sort of spend time in different circles back and forth. But everyone else that has logins to your Salesforce instance that uses your Salesforce data, they may not actually spend as much time in all of these different circles. So the widest concentric circle, meaning to be able to read data, understand it, sometimes you can reference is maybe the riders in a van. So I use the minivan analogy because I'm a parent. I've got several children at home and a partner, sometimes pets. So when I'm in the minivan driving around, sometimes I've got people in the van that ride with me, but they're just riders. They're like ride-alongs. And I'm the person driving it. So I'm driving the van, where it goes, how it gets there, maintaining the van, keeping it safe. They're just consuming the data. They're just in the van, enjoying the ride. Maybe they ask me some questions. They're not actually the ones sort of in the driver's seat deciding that. Ray, put a 1 in the chat if you feel like you're in the Salesforce driver's seat at your instance. If you don't feel like you're a Salesforce in the driver's seat, maybe that's a team of people, maybe that's a separate department, put a 0. So 1, if you feel like you've got your hands on the steering wheel and you can sort of drive how Salesforce data is used, put a 0 if you're like, well, that's sort of somebody else. I'm a part of that, but I'm not maybe the key one. Sweet. Thank you also for the feedback. This is important, right? Because if I'm the driver and I'm driving the minivan, like you think Chevy Chase kind of road trips, and I'm driving, I decide where the van goes. So even if my kids really want to stop for a bio break, or when you want to stop for McDonald's or Starbucks or something else, I'm like, well, I'm the one that decides because I'm in the driver's seat. And it's good to know if you're in the driver's seat, sometimes you are, sometimes you aren't. And that's just the reality of working in Salesforce with different folks. That's a good call, Becky. I would recommend doing that too. Whatever Lisa says, when she says to me, jump, I usually say, how high? That's my constant experience. So you've got maybe 100 end users, maybe 15 department heads, and maybe 5 report writers. This is one way to reference the skill level of data literacy increases as your ownership or your responsibility of that data increases as well. So this is important because the second milestone of data literacy is called working with data, and that means getting your hands on the data, getting it clean, figuring it out, making sense of it. If you have any questions, feel free to chat them or listen in the chat, and I will keep it moving. So our first milestone in data literacy is actually being able to understand how the data, these little sort of records and fields in your Salesforce instance that you show people on screen and presentations, actually represent the outside world. Maybe it's a contract that you're entertaining for a sales invoice. Maybe it is a lead that you met at a Dreamforce event or a Trailhead DX. Maybe it's an event record, but all of these are records in Salesforce and they represent the outside world. How they represent the outside world and the specific information about that is basically being able to say, here's the data in my database and here's how it represents the outside world and why it matters to our business. It also includes the ability to sort of maybe explain an entity relationship diagram. That's what ERD stands for. And just sort of like understand sort of how data works in your instance and where it comes from. When you are on a journey, I'll take the van analogy too, because I'm running with it. I'm rolling with the van analogy for right now. A lot of times I'm on a journey in life and I've got small stops along the destination. So I've got a milestone maybe that I'm trying to accomplish in my current work as a Salesforce admin. Even myself as a Salesforce admin, working in Salesforce with my company at Apsona, I have some short-term goals. I want my sales lead to be able to see and understand their data in a grid-based view so that we can clean it up and focus on particular leads and drive them in a certain direction. Or I want all of my cases in Salesforce so that my service team, my support team, can sort of see all that information, look at it in one place, and then begin to pick out patterns of what kinds of requests are coming in from different customers. Are they around doc merge product? Are they around multi-step report product? I want to be able to see data and apply those ideas of where I want my company to get in different places. So a lot of times we say data literacy is a journey, not a destination, and not just one stop. It'd be the same as if I were to speak to you all and say, oh my gosh, guys, I am just one of the best readers out there. My reading literacy is just off the charts. I read like twice a day at night on my Amazon Kindle. And then sometimes I read even after I go to bed, like I'm reading in my brain. I am just such a great reader. Like, you understand, like we don't talk like that. I want to make it clear that data literacy is also something that we're on a journey on together. And we're all in a cycle of going back and forth, explaining data to people, analyzing the data with people, going back and cleaning data to figure it out, and then going back to other stops. So it's a circuitous experience, but the goal is that you're able to actually communicate that data to create value for your team. Okay, so I would like some feedback from you all. I'd like to hear, when it comes to this idea of working with data, the shorthand of this is you either acquire or create data. You're cleaning the data, moving into a structured format, or you're managing the data, i.e. you're trying to keep it clean, keep it from getting messed up. what kinds of questions does your team give you or do you hear when it comes to data? It could be, hey, why isn't this data present in Salesforce? So could everybody sort of add one question in the chat of a question that you've heard in your business environment and say, what is a question that you've gotten about data, whether it's clean or not, whether it's needs to be cleaned, why the data is not there, why the data is missing from a report. Could you guys take a moment and just list what that question might be? Any questions are up for grabs, no holds barred here. All right, so we got, why are there so many dupes? Allison, great question. Double work. Is there a data literacy admin title? Not to my knowledge, double work. I'm using the term data literacy as a way to sort of drill into the idea that data literacy is just an idea. It is a way to approach the idea of Salesforce data being more helpful to other people. So I'm using it as a way to reference what different people have and sort of shows up in different places. So yeah, data literacy is just a term that I picked and have started to use as I've gotten lots and lots of experience answering questions of Salesforce customers, working with Apsona customers, helping people actually establish their own learning of their data and moving through the data literacy journey. Jen, great question. How do I access that data? Where is that data? Is it in Salesforce? Is it somewhere else? Jean wrote how to merge 2 individual orgs with possible duplicate contacts, companies, etc. Jen listed where's the data kept. Ashley listed having to respond to a report request that we can't pull because it's not being entered. Clutch example. Thank you, Ashley. So yeah, so we get all sorts of different questions. I was actually on the phone yesterday with Evan, Evan Ponter, author of a lot of content in the Salesforce ecosystem around the idea of a deluxe report type. Evan and I are doing a presentation tomorrow for a user group for Penn State, and we were talking about it, and he flagged me on this idea that people don't even realize that data is not in Salesforce. So getting people a place to understand how reporting works will be a part of our presentation in April, my presentation in April. But for us today, people ask us all sorts of questions, and they're not really aware of some of the background of like whether Salesforce data, whether data is in Salesforce or not. Thanks for answering those, y'all. So when I think about the idea of working with Salesforce data or working it, I think of these 3 sort of like these 3 categories, right? So I took the initial definition and then I broke it apart in how I understand Salesforce data. I would love. I can't make a heart very well with my fingers. My kids are trying to teach me. I would love your feedback. So if you think there might be an explanation of how to work with data that's not captured here, would love you to have that in the chat. For creating and acquiring data, we think of that as importing data, inserting data, maybe upserting it, any kinds of data record process where we're creating records in Salesforce. Those may also be data pipelines. So people are porting data into your environment, maybe through an integration, an email integration, other inputs, any kind of thing where you're sort of seeing Salesforce records in Salesforce and you didn't sort of physically type in that information, or that didn't come from a user, you're knowing that data is sort of flowing into Salesforce in certain ways. Basically, it's like one big pile of data and people are putting it in different ways. Cleaning data is another aspect of working with data. In this place, you have the term oftentimes in data literacy is an unstructured data. So you have data maybe that has missing fields in it. Maybe the data, certain records are duplicates versus other records. So the idea of an unstructured table is like a big Excel spreadsheet with lots of holes in it. And then the structured table would be all of those holes are filled in, all of those values are correct. If somebody wrote in several different values for a field, like DC or District of Columbia or district or Washington, .DC, those 4 different sort of options of how to explain a mailing state to a person, you would say that's unstructured data because it's different syntax. They're using different values for what should be one value. So it's sort of like getting all your data in one place and getting it to fit one structure, but not allowing a lot of variation for, oh, we can call that anything. We need to call it the same value. Duplicate management. There is an Apsona webinar later today with one of our partners where we have an application for duplicate management. We talk about that. And then another part of cleaning data is just deleting incorrect data. So you've got data in there that's just incorrect. It's not helpful. It's not providing any service. So getting that data out of your system on a consistent basis. Jen, thanks for your feedback. And Jean, thanks for your feedback. Yeah, a lot of times if you have a pretty busy Salesforce instance, you may have data lakes or several different data repositories where you're pulling information data out of that lake into Salesforce, or maybe a BI tool, or putting it back in. So there may be a two-way or a one-way integration where that information is coming back and forth. And then lastly, managing your data. So the idea that your data needs to sort of constant management. You need to sort of massage it, keep it clean. When a person in your organization asks for a particular report, hey, show me the top 5 performing accounts this year, or year over year for the last 5 years. You don't want to give them a data report that has inaccurate data on it. So keeping your data structured in a way that fits reporting requirements is a key outcome here. Having ongoing steps to review. Put a 3 in the chat if you guys use a data cleanliness dashboard, or if you've ever seen one used before in your instance. It's essentially just a Salesforce dashboard that has a bunch of components on it. And each component is meant to drill into, is data present on this report that's incorrect in some way? Is it a bad field? Is it a duplicate? Is it something else? So put a 3 in the chat if you've ever used a Salesforce dashboard to create a cleanliness check. Put a 2 in the dashboard, or put a 2 in the chat if you have no idea what I'm talking about. And then the last thing I'm going to note is assessing the needs for new data. So to your point, Gene, you may have data coming out of Salesforce, going into Salesforce from different places. Needing to actually sort of see those different pipes coming in and going out of Salesforce, like that's managing your data too. So if you're not data literate, you're not able to sort of actively engage and have the skills to sort of manage those things. So managing data is a pretty big milestone in the data literacy experience. Being able to insert data, create it, manage it, clean it, get it structured in a way that people can use it, managing on an ongoing basis, like that whole swath of information in the data science world. If you were sort of a Tableau CRM analyst, you might spend 80% of your time, like the total time you're working on data science projects. The usual metric or stat that I see is that it takes 80% of the time to just clean the data. You're using Tableau Prep or using other tools to actually clean up all of these unstructured data sources to get them into a format that fits. And then once it fits, then you're able to do vizzes on it and creating information that's helpful for other people to understand. So with that being said, I'm going to go on. And I'm going to say some of the practices or tools that we've heard about. I've included a couple of those here. We're going to do a snapshot of how to manage your data using a couple of these tools. So I'm going to give a brief overview. You'll note that my initial purposes in these webinars, just as a free service to the community, is, hey, open up the question of data management, open up the question of data literacy to the widest Salesforce ecosystem, and then get people asking questions. So my goal here is not to sell any particular product. It is only my information that I've learned from doing research on the internet. I don't have a safe harbor slide, but if I did, it would be on this deck. I've only been sort of reviewing and identifying ways that people can work with data using tools and practices that are both free and paid for in the Salesforce space. So the main need for what creating and acquiring data is usually what they call ETL tools, which stands for extract, transform, load. An ETL tool basically just sort of helps you take a data set, maybe a CSV, an Excel file, and then put it in Salesforce, clean it up, maybe look at it, review it, and then insert it and then create a bunch of records. That's the simplest way. There's a number of tools out there that do that. Apsona is one, which is why I know as much about both Apsona and this general area. So are other tools like dataloader.io, the product purchased by Salesforce through MuleSoft about a few years ago. So dataloader.io is a great tool. Demand Tools is a great tool. It's an enterprise tool that's out there. The company name there is Validity. And then there's a free tool I found out about by doing this research by Google called Salesforce Connector. So we'll go through sort of a brief review of those in a moment, but those are just some tools to sort of look at. And then data integration management. So the automated creation and maintenance of data being entered into your system. There's a number of tools as well here, like Skyvia. I think Jitterbit has some ETL functions on a scheduled basis. And then a number of these as well. Dataloader.io and Demand Tools both have the ability to sort of schedule inserts. So if you need to be able to create data on a consistent basis, put the spreadsheet here in this online folder, put it here on a weekly basis, and Skyvia or whichever app you're using would grab it, insert it into Salesforce, and then you'd be done. So there are lots of tools out there to help you with your data management skills. Working with data, creating data is one of those. So I'm going to right now show one screen, and then I'm going to flip over to just a quick overview of a couple of these items so you guys can see them together. So for kicks and giggles, I'm going to start with just the free one. If I can find my share screen correctly. So I'm going to share this window. So this was a tool that we actually referenced on the reading data literacy one as well, because it was really nice to have free tools out there. This is called the Data Connector for Salesforce. It essentially lives in your Google spreadsheet instance and allows you to click on this record. You know what? What did I want to do here? Sorry, team. So to insert data and to actually get it in Salesforce is what we're talking about, creating and acquiring data. So this spreadsheet document here, this spreadsheet is a Google spreadsheet just in my Google Drive. And under extensions, I've gone to Salesforce Connector and I've gone and sort of created that as an app on my, pulled that from the Google Drive list of apps and then being able to offer it here. So clicking on Learn More takes you to the space. You can always sort of click it on it up here and just click on Salesforce Connector and sort of find it. Oh, I'm so sorry. And then view it in the store. That's what I wanted to do. Sorry, Gene. Yes, this is where it is. If you have a Google Spreadsheets, you can grab this. Yeah, me too, actually. I had no idea this existed until I started to do this research. It is essentially a free version that gets your data into a Google spreadsheet. And some of the key outcomes here that I want to just reference are, it lets you pull from reports. So if you have Salesforce reports already existing in your Salesforce instance, you can pull those in and load those directly to a spreadsheet tab. The key flag is they'll always tell you to bring in your record ID. They're going to use that record ID as a key match to be able to push it back to Salesforce if you want to push any updates, i.e. if you want to create new records, new rows, etc. It does allow you to do an import data here. So if you had a spreadsheet here on your file and you wanted to insert that data to Salesforce, this would be a tool to do it. It's free, it's out of the box. I have not used it heavily, but it does give you that ability and pretty easy to load. You authenticate with Salesforce and then I won't go into deep detail, but just referencing that it's a great tool for creating and acquiring data. Validity is another great tool. I'll just sort of reference this one shortly. So this is the trial version of Validity. Pretty cool to use. You can sort of just click on the dashboard here, and they basically have a separate browser window where all this information is collected and then showing it in one space. It gives you the ability to sort of like see, to do a couple additional things as well. There's a couple apps included in this, including import as well. But the import process lets you choose a file, insert it, and show it on system. And then, what was my last one? So my standard one is Apsona. I won't sort of show you guys the Apsona view, but Apsona is basically an application that actually lets you load data directly into Salesforce, but it's an application that lives in your Salesforce environment. So let me just sort of share my other screen again. So here, those were a couple quick tools: Apsona demand tools and Salesforce Connector. Cleaning data to be able to take unstructured data and create it as structured, and then managing the data. I think of this as like a way to see all of your data in one place and then clean it up. So the tools that I found that were most helpful for that were, well, there are a number of them. I won't say which one was the best because I think it's based on your own personal preferences. This particular slide deck here is expressly referencing which tools are good for importing data. So dataloader.io is the one from Salesforce. I think most people have already used it before in the past. It's the standard that I used to use a lot as a consultant. But the goal here is that you, as a Salesforce admin, as the person driving the van, can quickly add data to Salesforce as needed. Dataloader.io, just a quick call out, or you can schedule imports and exports. And then you can use it for separate Salesforce orgs. So if you've got a couple different Salesforce orgs you're working in, you can move from sandbox to dev to prod as needed. Very helpful. One limit is that you're only able to do about 10,000 records in a month. You can always purchase the paid for version and get the nice upswell from that, but that's the current ability. Demand tools, some of the things I learned here about how to get your data into Salesforce and insert it. It does let you schedule imports and it lets you do multiple orgs as well. And there's a limit of a file. So you can only insert up to a 10 megabyte file. Most of us don't have records more than 10 megabytes, but sometimes we do. You can always increase that by purchasing their next level up, and then you can upgrade up to 50 megabytes and beyond for sort of their higher versions. Zapex is essentially an app on the App Exchange that lets you do the same thing that Salesforce Connector does, but you can do it in Excel too. So one of the big benefits is if you're an Excel-based shop, you want to have that application in your Excel wizard, you can actually have that as an add-on in Excel, so you can sort of quickly see it there. And then to wrap up, I'm going to go through just sort of the remaining items here on acquiring and importing data. Provenworks is a great application. It does have this really nice feature of being able to like roll back features. So, or roll back and import. So if you import a bunch of data and then you realize, oh my gosh, I made an uh-oh, you don't have to go back in and find it. You can actually push this button to roll it back, which is pretty cool. It's within Salesforce, which is another big win. And I'm not 100% clear on the record label. I think there's a limit on object levels for certain objects you can import or not, but I need out there. We talked about the Salesforce connector. We went over that in a moment. And then for Apsona, one of the benefits for Apsona that I usually talk about in demos and conversations is that flags required fields as you try to insert them. So if you try to insert fields and you're missing company name or last name or a required field on that object, it will flag you and stop you from doing it and make sure that you fix the data before you put it in. And Apsona is based within Salesforce. So one of my focus here is to sort of talk about data literacy, how to work with data. Acquiring the data and getting it into Salesforce is one of the key outcomes, right? One of the standard expectations for an admin is that you can take your data, put it in Salesforce, and it's clean and it's ready to go for other people to use it. So to establish this sort of second phase of data literacy, I'll reference that generally you'll need to be able to explore, review, and make inferences of your data. The first step that we covered today was how to acquire data. The next step we're going to tackle is actually on how to explore specific child records, maybe filter on that, review it and see it together. And then deciding, hey, like as I'm looking at my data and exploring it, do I see more dirty data? Can I bulk update these fields? Can I mash delete these records over here that need to be cleaned up? Just the need to sort of like physically sort of like walk through your database and clean it up, much like an Excel spreadsheet, is another aspect of managing your data. So I know went a little bit fast towards the end. Let me sort of just pause as we're wrapping up towards the end of the hour. Any questions from you all? You guys want to come off mute and ask a question out loud, or happy to chat it in the sidebar. Seb Work wrote, not happy about Salesforce reporting and dashboards and use other software. Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts on reporting and analytics. Apsona fits in that space as a product. We have some reporting features that you can't get to with Salesforce. We have a specific product that's aimed at really complex analytics. And then as always, there's other products as well. There's a really neat Salesforce report. There's Salesforce report applications on the App Exchange, and then Tableau or CRM Analytics is also one of the native sort of upsells or processes of like a product you use to give you really enhanced reporting and analytics abilities. But yeah, but if you guys have any questions about Apsona in specific, I'd be happy to give you a demo or walk you through that. I do reporting every day for my team and specifically for my role. Great question. So I'll wait a few moments more, see if there's any other questions. But if not, yeah, it was really wonderful to hear from you all and to sort of see you. I'll see if we can do some sort of a video maybe in the future. We're trying out some different ideas with how to do these data literacy workshops to give people more insight, more awareness. If you have ideas of how to make our data literacy workshops better or more effective, please send me an email. I'll add my email address right here in the chat if you guys want to send me a note. And yeah, beyond that, it was splendid to see you all. We'll upload this recording to YouTube later. If you have anybody on our team that wants to know about it, we'll deliver this so you'll be able to pass it along through YouTube. Right now, I'm just uploading it to my own personal YouTube channel just so people can sort of get to it easily. And beyond that, hope you guys all have a wonderful Wednesday. Look forward to seeing you soon.